Today, we're diving into one of evolution's most incredible stories, the tale of fishes that literally learned how to breathe air. I mean, this is a journey of some seriously amazing adaptations, showing how life just, well, it finds a way to thrive, even if that means leaving the water behind.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle the why. What pressures pushed fish to start breathing air in the first place? Then we're going to explore all the different solutions they came up with, from simply breathing through their skin all the way to developing actual lungs. And of course, we'll wrap it all up with a look at this incredible evolutionary toolkit.
All right, let's kick things off with the big question, right? Why on earth would a fish, an animal that's perfectly built for life underwater, ever need to start breathing air?
Well, it really all comes down to their environment. I want you to picture this. You're in a shallow, warm swamp, maybe a stagnant pool where all the decaying stuff is sucking up the dissolved oxygen. For a fish living there, in those hypoxic waters, the air right above the surface, that's a lifeline. It's an emergency oxygen tank. And that pressure, that need to survive, is what kicked off all of these incredible adaptations.
And this leads to a really cool strategy called bimodal breathing. You know, most of these fish don't just ditch their gills completely. No way. Instead, they develop a backup system, an accessory respiratory organ. This gives them the best of both worlds. They can switch between breathing in the water and breathing in the air depending on what the conditions are like. It's all about maximizing their chances of survival.
Okay, so you might be thinking, why not just use their gills in the air? It's a fair question. The thing is, gills are masterpieces of engineering for water. In air, all those delicate little filaments just collapse on each other and the surface area for breathing just vanishes. But, and this is super important, they still need them. Gills are absolutely essential for getting rid of carbon dioxide, and that's exactly why even the most advanced air breathers like lungfish still have their gills.
All right, so let's check out the first set of solutions. This is all about fish, basically using what they've already got, modifying their skin and their gills to breathe air.
So, what's the simplest solution? Just breathe through your skin. Seriously. Critters like the freshwater eel and the incredible mud skipper have what's called highly vascularized skin. That's just a fancy way of saying it's packed with blood vessels right near the surface. As long as they can keep that skin moist, they can pull oxygen right out of the air. It's what lets them make those daring little trips out onto land.
Now remember how I said gills don't work in air? Well, evolution loves to break the rules. There are a few rare exceptions, like the swamp eel synbranchus. It's actually evolved gills that are reinforced structurally so they don't collapse. What these fish do is they swim up, gulp a mouthful of air, and then pass it over these special gills. And to top it off, their mouths are also full of blood vessels, so they help out with the gas exchange too.
Okay, so from those initial hacks, things start to get way more complex. We're talking about the evolution of brand new breathing organs. And you find these things in the weirdest places, in the head, or even, get this, inside the gut.
Let's take the South American electric eel. Yeah, everyone knows about its famous shock, but it's got another secret. Its mouth is basically a lung. The inside is lined with all these complex, blood-rich folds and little bumps called papillae. All of that just dramatically boosts the surface area, letting it absorb a ton of oxygen from the air it gulps. Now, this next adaptation is a huge leap forward, a real evolutionary game changer. In fish like gouramis and the climbing perch, a special air pocket actually forms just above their gills. And then a modified part of a gill arch develops into this super intricate folded structure. They call it the labyrinth organ. This thing grows right into that air chamber and works just like a lung. It's an incredible piece of biological hardware that lets them thrive where other fish can't. Even the gill cover, the operculum, gets repurposed in this story. In some fish, the cavities behind the gill cover turn into these thin, almost balloon-like sacs just for holding air. And then you have others, like the catfish, sacrobranchus, where it gets even crazier. They've evolved these long air sacs that stretch from the head way back into the body, tucked right in between their muscles.
All right, this might be one of the most bizarre adaptations of all. Some catfish literally breathe with their gut. I'm not kidding. They swallow a bubble of air, pass it down to a special part of their stomach or intestine that's packed with blood vessels, and do the gas exchange right there. And the used air? Well, it comes out the other end, or back out the mouth.
All of these different experiments in evolution lead us to a really crucial turning point, the repurposing of the swim bladder. This is a huge deal, because this step is on the direct evolutionary path to the lungs that you find in, well, us and every other vertebrate on land.
So,
You know how most fish have a swim bladder to control their buoyancy to go up and down in the water? Well, in some really ancient fish, like gars and the bowfin, that swim bladder is also loaded with blood vessels. So when the oxygen in the water gets low, they just swim up to the surface, gulp some air, and use their swim bladder like a proto-lung. It's a textbook example of what we call exaptation. That's when a feature that evolved for one job gets co-opted for a totally new one.
And where does this evolutionary road lead? It leads to the lungfishes. These guys have the most advanced, most sophisticated air-breathing gear of any fish out there. You could say they're the pinnacle of this entire trend.
But what's really interesting is that not all lungfish are the same. You can see a big split in the group. The Australian lungfish, for instance, is what we call a facultative air breather. It has a single, pretty basic lung, and it only uses it when it has to. But its cousins in Africa and South America, they are obligate air breathers. They have to breathe air to live. And their lungs are way more advanced. They have paired lungs, full of complex little pockets called alveoli, that look a lot like the lungs of amphibians, or even our own.
And get this, they don't just go bare randomly. They have this really slick four-step breathing process. First, they take in fresh air. Then, they open their glottis, mixing that fresh air with used air from their lungs. Third, they close their mouth and force that whole mixture into the lungs. And finally, they close the glottis to hold the air in for gas exchange. It's an incredibly advanced system. It's like a sneak peek of how animals on land breathe.
But if you want to see their ultimate survival trick, you have to look at estimation. It's incredible. When their pond or river starts to dry up, some of these lungfish will burrow down into the mud, secrete this mucus cocoon all around themselves to stay moist, and just wait. They go into this dormant state, switching completely to air breathing, and they can survive like that for months, sometimes even years, just waiting for the rain to come back. So, to wrap things up, it's pretty amazing, right? This one single problem, not enough oxygen in the water, led to this incredible explosion of different evolutionary solutions for breathing air.
I mean, think about it. We've seen breathing through the skin, reinforced gills, tricked out mouths and gill covers, breathing with the gut, turning a swim bladder into a proto-lung, and finally, developing actual true lungs. This incredible variety is just a beautiful showcase of convergent evolution. That's when totally different groups of animals independently come up with similar answers to the same problem. All right, time for a quick pop quiz to see if you were paying attention. Question 1. In species like the climbing perch, what do we call that complex, folded organ that comes from a modified gill arch and acts like a lung? Take a second. Got it? That's the labyrinth organ. Okay, and question number 2. Why do even the hardcore, obligate air breathers like the African lungfish still hang on to their gills? Think back. The reason is they're absolutely critical for getting rid of carbon dioxide. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Studying these air-breathing fish, it's more than just a lesson in fish biology. It's like looking back in time. We're witnessing the very first shaky steps that our own distant ancestors took on the epic journey out of the water and onto land. It's the beginning of our story, too. Thanks for joining me.